The next big economic collapse will be when the major countries of the world decide to rid of paper currency and go to an electronic money currency using smart cards or RFID chips. By the way, Hitachi has gotten the RFID chip down to a dust particle. Seems more realistic now. Currently, less than 3% of the total circulation of money in the US occurs with paper currency, and 90% of that comes from illegal business operations. Well, some will say, I'll just put my money in gold. Really? Go buy a certificate for gold, and then try to redeem it. And then you can say that it is a safe bet. Otherwise, that certificate is as good as the greenbacks in my back pocket. Remember, in a land of abundance, gold is considered a luxury. In a world of scarce supply of commodities like food, shelter, essentials, gold becomes meaningless. I would rather have a supply of bread or water, and probably I would not trade my bread or water for gold, since it is useless to anybody who does not wear it as jewelry or make computer chips out of it. You still want to put your hopes in gold? That is up to you. The trend is more production with less people, whether that be with the use of technology or by working workers harder. The coming years will call for way less workers than ever before. Remember, this past Great Recession, companies downsized, but were still able to produce a quantity similar to what they had been producing with a larger workforce. Americans that were laid off during the Great Recession or still to be laid off must come to realize that not only are their jobs not coming back, but there is no new industrial revolution or technology revolution on the horizon that is going to increase economic growth. It is sad to say, but inevitable. America has peaked in growth. If you look at the past economic collapses in U.S. history, you will notice it was some sort of industrial revolution, world war, infrastructure development, or technology revolution that pulled the U.S. out of economic destruction. The first real economic collapse happened in 1927. The effects were tremendous. You can think of it as the final consolidation of private banks under the Federal Reserve Bank. Not too shortly afterward would the greenback no longer be backed by gold. It was also the first time the Federal Reserve Bank confiscated all the gold in the U.S. by Franklin D. Roosevelt's 1933 Executive Order 6102. Again, regardless of the particular motive of why and how the collapse occurred, it was the first time in America where the population had an unemployment rate of 20%. The recovery did not happen quickly. Actually, the recovery did not occur until 1941, which beforehand the unemployment rate never dropped below 14%. Even with all the government programs being signed into law, no significant economic growth was occurring. This is because there was no new markets to employ the people until World War II. With the help of World War II, we were able to send our unemployed overseas to fight Japan and Germany. When the war ended, the wages earned by the troops as well as the government's GI Bill and the housing industry took off. Residential neighborhoods sprung up all over the country. Highways and communication lines were also being created at a record pace. But again, the economy slowed down in the 70s and early 80s. Once again, America was saved by the technology revolution. Of course, this tech bubble burst in 2000. Not saying that the technology industry collapsed. It just came to a point to where not as many bodies were needed in order to sustain the technology growth and innovation. This brings us to the present. With the Great Recession in 2008, America again is faced with a similar economic collapse, similar to the ones in the 80s and 30s. However, this time America will not have the help of the manufacturing sector, since virtually nothing we use daily is produced in the U.S. anymore. The housing or construction sector has overgrown and overbuilt. National defense sector, well, we are already fighting 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, along with policing the world and economic aid. Our government spending sprees, I don't know how long that's going to last. Currently, the U.S. is at a $14 trillion debt and climbing. Foreign countries are already reducing the amount of treasuries they are buying, and the Federal Reserve is going to start reducing the amount of treasury bills that it buys. This would leave only one sector remaining, and that is the technology sector. Although relatively new in American history, the technology sector will not produce jobs like the construction sectors or manufacturing sectors did. Remember, technology makes our lives easier. It gives a business owner the ability to utilize less people. True, it costs the company a lot for the machine. But after the initial cost, there is only maintenance fees. No health benefits, no payroll taxes, no pensions, no unions, no headaches for the owner. But people will say these people who lost their jobs to machines will just get retrained and work in the new sector. First, supposing most people could be retrained to work in the more technical field, there would not be enough positions open to fill the numbers that were laid off. Think of the phone company, for example. Remember, there used to be a switchboard that people would have to man in order to connect calls. Well, all those switchboard operators positions do not exist anymore. However, this downsize happened when the country was growing and was able to absorb the displaced workers. This time America is not so lucky. What we must do is expand our economic borders. We need to start developing other countries to the level of American economic standards. You may say this will cause interconnectivity between countries and consequently countries will lose their sovereignty, that this will lead to some sort of new world order. To the contrary, this is not what would happen as long as the leading countries are being ruled by competent and moral leaders, which I admit we have never really had. We would have to recreate the US political system, which will be my next video. But once that is in place, with the competent leaders elected, we can then divert spending to second world countries and then create a unified front between the second and first world countries to help the third world countries. Not an overnight solution, by all means, but it will stir economic growth in virtually every field. However, the long-term effect is not going to be so good, because this will not be sustainable. As more people become more educated, healthier, and able to afford more things, our resources will be dramatically depleted. Therefore, population control will ultimately have to be the answer very soon. We could either let the Earth depopulate the human population itself, or we can put measures in to do it ourselves. But when the population gets too large, nature has a way of bringing these things back to equilibrium.